Willow, Season 9, Chapter 9, A Tall, Cold Shadow. Life is a lot like a meal. I know. Everything is like a meal to me. Annabelle once accused me of having a limited perspective, and maybe she's right. But also, isn't everything related to food somehow? Think about it. Eating and drinking is everything to us. It's what keeps us alive, what brings us together, the bedrock of every celebration we enjoy. We look at our diet to regulate our health and our mood. What important event gets highlighted without a feast? It's part of our trends. We define our personalities on the food we eat. So what if I make everything about food? Reality beat me to it. If you step back and look at life, the parallels are obvious. We come to this table and are offered an appetizer, something small to get us started. If we're having a house salad, we expect a modest meal, but if we get to enjoy a lobster bisque or a grilled jumbo shrimp with a delicate balsamic reduction drizzle, we know we're in for a lavish journey. The series of courses hit every landmark, and in the end, we return to the small plate, something modest to see us off, preferably a little sweet treat on the way out. And then, once we're gone, our meal enjoyed to whatever extent we could, those that remain are left with the dirty dishes. Full plates for courses that were not as enjoyable, and clean bowls where we devoured every last bite. A full life might leave behind a stack of plates and bowls and a mountain of silverware, all of which needs to be handled. Then there are those who barely make it to the main course. They too leave behind their dirty dishes, but it's a far more difficult task to clean up after they're gone, to wipe those echoes clean. Death sits next to me, the pale man, long fingers waiting to pick up after Nisha's life and wash the forks and knives she barely had time to use. Don't interfere, he demands, and I'm outraged. What right does he have to keep us from trying to stay his hand? Every day we work, we fight, and we struggle to put food in our bellies, specifically to keep death away. This feast we call life is a constant battle to make sure the pale man does not sit at our table. What if I find a dish that can keep Nisha alive for the next course? What of it? You're here for her, aren't you? I turn to face the pale man, twisting in my chair slowly, hoping that once I can get a better look, I'll find my perception tricked me. In a normal place, there would be no one in the next chair over. There would be some old man on his phone, and my mind played tricks on me, dressing him up in Death's garments, putting Death's words in his mouth. Alas, that is not the case. I want to be mad at him, to scream and growl and order death itself to leave this place and to leave Nisha alone. Hasn't there been enough tragedy in Willow already? My fingers strain against the arms of the chair, enough to damn near pull the nails off of them, but my outrage is short-lived. He looks tired. Tall and gaunt, the harbinger of final rest looks like he needs it more than anyone. His face, already thin, is drawn. His lips nearly vanish, and his eyes, already sunken, are now lost in deep hollows. His would be a terrifying visage, if not so pitiful instead. "No," he says, his voice strained as if he's been running a marathon. "Not yet, but soon." "Then why are you here? Someone else in the hospital?" His fingers wrap around the top of his hat, tracing the brim first with an index. His eyes focus on something beyond the wall in front of us, into the rooms deeper in the hospital. Perhaps he sees Nisha, or maybe Anais as she already mourns her dying daughter. There's no joy in the pale man's face. Neither is there that peaceful calm one wants from the reaper. When he came for Edith Lowry, Death had the attitude of a working stiff. This was a job, and little old Miss Lowry had had a good life. She was old, had seen her family live and die, and she enjoyed a good piece of salted caramel brownie. That didn't stop me from bargaining with him, getting another year or two for Edith in exchange for a bowl of soup. There was a pandemic back then. Death by the millions. Like a war, but one where we were losing to germs and ignorance. The pale man was exhausted. He was cold, hungry. And I make one hell of a butternut squash soup, just the right amount of nutmeg. Looking at him tonight, I wonder if things ever did slow down. If Death was ever able to go back to the routine of helping the living out of their mortal coil. I doubt it. Or perhaps the pale man does see a difference between those he takes. I sit back and look ahead, trying to imagine what he sees. Why can't we give her a few more years? I say, conversational, without begging. Or a whole life. A long silence stretches between us. It's enough to make me look sideways, hoping to catch a glimpse and confirm the pale man is still there, sitting in silence, contemplating my offer. Whatever you want, I continue, allowing some desperation to bleed through, I can make. You could have a feast waiting for you whenever the work gets to be too much. Nothing. I know. My insistence starts to sound like imploring. I get it. There's a balance between life and death, and people can't live forever. You can't just stay your hand whenever a mortal begs for a favor. But what is one child getting to eat a full lifetime instead of just the first few bites? Death lets out a sigh, and is far more sad than it is scary. Edith Lowry was a bother because she was one of so many that shouldn't have died in the first place. Nisha is something different. To the pale man, the children weigh heavy. I'm not the arbiter in this case, Miss Dufour, Death explains calmly. Her body has made these decisions long before I was to be involved. Soon it will fail, and I will come back. And knowing your family history, you will take that time to meddle and interfere. I'm asking you to please not. I smile. It's a thin, wan kind of affair, almost more of a smirk. So, this kind of thing has happened before. The Dufour witches thumbing their noses at death itself, laughing in the face of the Reaper. I imagine Doris, hard at work deep into the night, steam rising from saucepans, and the aroma of miracle food filling the Aquilo Cafe. Or Madeline, lit by candles like a proper witch, fussing over the correct quantity of herbs to add to her soup, thickening her broth in preparation for a battle with death. What a fitting set of images to represent the legacy I've inherited. The women that came before me, standing strong on the side of life. Do they ever succeed? I ask, hopeful that the pale man's weariness is with the repeated successes of the Dufour witches. Perhaps we are the unbroken wall upon which he beats his head, and thus the source of his fatigue. I feel for him if that's the case, but not enough that I won't follow in my ancestors' footsteps. No. That single word sinks my optimism and shatters my hopes. Is he just saying that, an attempt to dissuade me from doing what we Dufours do? Why try if it's never been done? After all, am I not the lesser of my line? Untutored, unmentored, and lacking in both knowledge and experience. Oh, he continues, driving the point home. The best of you can delay the inevitable, of course. Barter a year here, borrow a month there. But in the end, duty binds me as it binds all things. Magic is a way to bend the laws of nature, not ignore them. With great effort, the pale man pulls himself to his feet. From where I sit, he towers over everything, needing to remain bent so as not to touch the ceiling. I don't remember him having such height in the cafe. Then again, I'd be a fool to think him a creature bound by constants. He fiddles with his hat, apparently unsure if he should bother donning it. How does Shanifa not notice him? Light itself seems to shy from his presence, the fluorescence dimming when he gets close. The poor child has already been given more than she was meant. Interference at this point would be of no use to her and only prolong her suffering. Obviously, I can't accept that. Hate comes here, in this moment of potential tragedy, only to give me hope that perhaps I do have the power to change things, warns me not to, then puts it on my shoulders that interference would hurt Nisha. I would have thought death had a better understanding of life, and how desperate we all are to cling to it. I stand up, putting myself in his way, refusing to let the conversation end on this final warning. My challenge seems to have hit a nerve. The small waiting room grows cold and dark. Light from the rest of the hospital seems to halt at the threshold, and even the televisions don't have the same glow any longer. The air itself becomes thin, and the smell of antiseptic and disinfectant is gone. Everything feels somehow more sterile. The pale man reaches out to me and, despite me taking a step back, grabs my chin between his thin fingers. The gesture is condescending and a little mean. It's a reminder that this isn't just a patron of the Aquilo I'm talking to, a customer who once enjoyed a warm soup, but an entity different in nature. I've conversed with concepts and ideas before, things ethereal and abstract made flesh. But this is an entirely new category of monster. Miriam Antoinette Dufour. He speaks like a parent about to give his final warning. I know better than anyone how desperately the mortal hand grabs at life. Your family history has taught me to appreciate the earthly need to cling to the very last. I know well how one such as you might challenge reality to steal years from their end. I am asking you not to do that. His touch is neither cold nor warm, but rather a void of feeling. I would call it numb, but that diminishes how alien the contact is. My heart feels slow and my blood thick. Meanwhile, my breath struggles to move the thin air into my lungs. My organs are also revolting against this unnatural contact. Bowels threatening to void themselves in a malaise that hesitates between vertigo, nausea, and heartburn. More than the discomfort is the fear, outweighing my distress 1,000-fold. I remember facing a hunger demon and losing the fight, yet even in that moment, I was not as terrified as I am now, with death holding my face in his hands. After serving the pale man's soup and giving Edith Lowry a few more months of life, I often mused about what it would be like to meet him again, to have him drop by for another meal. Now, frozen in his presence, I want nothing more than to never see him again. I would live eternities gladly before having to cross the pale man's path anew. With his final warning delivered, death releases me. He bends over to put his hat back on before exiting the ER waiting room. If he offered me any further parting words, I missed them. I can't say how long I stand there, at the threshold of the waiting room. The only thing that snaps me back to reality is when the automatic doors to the exit slide open, allowing Gulliver back in. "Are you okay?" he asks, worry painting his face. We stay at the hospital for another hour. The empty reception area of the ER remains mostly quiet the whole time. Daylight creeps up through the sliding door, guilting me into running back to the Aquilo. Gulliver sits opposite me, his back sunken into his chair, legs splayed as much as the armrests will allow. His hands are folded over his chest, and his phone rests precariously on his left knee. Once in a while, he'll pick it up and scroll for a minute. For the most part, he just stares at me, waiting to see the cracks in my lie. I told him everything was fine. As I've said before, Gulliver's not an idiot, and a more obvious fib has seldom been told. The blood had left my face. My eyes were wide and watery from the threat of tears. My extremities were trembling from my lips to my toes. Sitting here, waiting for news of Nisha's condition, it's starting to dawn on me that I've just been threatened, though somewhat obliquely, by death itself. At first, I smile, stifling a giggle at the realization, the sheer absurdity of it. But then the weight starts to settle, and my demeanor falls apart, and the anxiety moves in again. All the while, Gulliver stares, waiting to see what he can do to help. Eventually, Shanifa walks back from the depths of the hospital. She looks tired, like a nurse nearing the end of her shift should, but there's an extra layer to it, a thickness in her movements as if every step was taken through a foot of water. "Go home," she calls out from the desk. "Miss Comtois thanks you for bringing her daughter's toy, but she won't be leaving her daughter's side, even for you." I sit frozen, my eyes moving from nurse to Gulliver, the futility of my presence beginning to sink in. She's right. Anais is right. Why should she waste even a minute talking to me if it takes her away from Nisha? And what do I have to offer anyway? Assurances that her daughter won't be surviving her ordeal after all? Rude of me not to answer, but I can't find the words. I can't even decide on an emotion. Part of me wants to barge in with broad promises of doing all I can for the ailing child. Another finds comfort in accepting reality as it is, or rather, as it was before I came to Aquilo. Back when death was death, and not someone who ate soup and delivered veiled threats. My legs are stiff from the hour of immobility, and I struggle to find my footing. Still, it feels good to pull myself out of the uncomfortable plastic chair. I hear Gulliver mumble something to Shanifa as the sliding doors glide out of my way, releasing me into the frigid air outside. "All right," Gulliver says, catching up to me. "Out with it. You can tell me what happened on our way back to the Aquilo." He sounds like Olivia, offering forceful compassion and a no-nonsense listening ear. The streets are emptier, yet more alive. The few cars that were parked on Rue de Blaireau are gone, off to whatever occupation their owners have during the day. I suspect a few even tried to stop by the cafe. Despite feeling deserted, the city is more alive now than when we arrived. The heartbeat of the village can be felt through the pavement underfoot. Traffic on Rue Principale and Main Street, the flowing blood that keeps the community alive. "I'm not going to the Aquilo," I say, hastening my step as the decision becomes more firm. Indeed, I take a right on Rue de Manchot, solidifying my resolve in the process. "Miriam, there's nothing you can do. Even Doris knew when to help someone and when to step back and let nature take its course." Gulliver matches my pace with ease. Long legs make it simple for him to keep up without breaking a sweat. I should get rid of him, send him on some errand to get him out of my hair. Maybe I could tell Gulliver to fetch his girlfriend, meet me at the cafe to discuss if there's anything we could do after all. It's believable. She is the more powerful witch. But despite my past enmity with Ophelia, I know that if there was anything in her power to stay the hand of death, she would have already done it. Citron, the canary, might have been her attempt to do her best. It might even be the delaying of the inevitable the pale man mentioned. Aquilo does not starve for powerful forces. The creatures of the forest and their nature goddess certainly have mystical leverage beyond comprehension. Do I want to deal with such fickle creatures, though? They aren't likely to offer their talents lightly, and what do I have to trade worth a life? Patience could offer counsel. As far as I know, he navigates outside the bounds of mortality. But where the forest is fickle, he is intransigent beyond his essence. Even if he had the means to keep Nisha from crossing over, would he use them? No. There's only one power in Aquilo that I trust to be awesome enough and reckless enough to stand between a child and her fate. The very thought makes my steps quicken, not because of the emergency of the situation, but rather to outrun my own common sense. "Miriam," Gulliver insists, his tone getting lighter in patience. "Where are we going, Miriam?" I ignore him, like a problem I want to go away. But Gulliver is not one to read social cues or respond to them when he does. "Miriam!" He grabs my arm, spinning me to face him. It's a miracle I don't trip and fall, but even if I did, his grasp is so firm he'd have held me up. Painfully, I expect. "Let go!" I snap, struggling to break free. It's not enough. Despite the strength I'm so proud of possessing, there's nothing I can do to escape his grasp. The only thing I achieve is pinching my own skin between his fingers. I wiggle for a moment, still hoping to find freedom, but he doesn't relent. In fact, he seems to be getting angrier the more I fight back. "Not until you tell me where you're going like that." He doesn't get his answer. Instead, I stop, staring him down, letting my own ire do the talking. Another moment passes between us, and at long last, he lets go. "Promise you won't try and stop me," I demand. There's a gust of wind that travels down the street, the kind of cold draft that promises chill weather in the next few hours. I didn't check the forecast this morning, but I wouldn't be surprised if a bit of snow fell before the day was done. "I can't promise that," he says, stuffing his hands in his pockets, as if ashamed of what they've just done. "I'm not going to let you go do something foolish or hurt yourself." I look around the street at the residential houses on each side. It's a nice part of town, the kind of place you'd want to raise a family. There's a small park 2 corners away on Rue de Framboise, and further up the street is the police station. This is a safe place, a comfortable place. While not as affluent as the Remington estate or the Black Manor, this is where the middle class of Aquilo make their home. A few lawns have signs of support for either Ian or Helen in the mayoral election. I can feel the eyes of people looking out their windows, wondering what the quarrel between the Dufour girl and her delivery guy might be. Hopefully, their imagination remains well tethered and isn't getting away with them. "I'm not going anywhere dangerous or anywhere foolish," I explain, forcing myself to calm down. "Look, you can come, but I just want you to keep an open mind." He nods. Not the nod of someone who understands, but of someone who trusts that whatever foolishness I have planned, it's for the best. It's the nod of someone who's seen me do stupid things and come out on top in the end. Satisfied that he won't try to stop me again, and now committed to my folly, I resume walking. Gulliver remains my shadow, 1 step behind and to my left. I expect him to pull out his phone and text Ophelia for assistance, or maybe Olivia if he's hoping for more effective support. We turn down Carver, walking all the way to where the street dies, ending with the vast forests north of Aquilo. I've been here only recently. Last time I was carrying a box of croissants, something between a bribe and a peace offering. Now, the only thing I have are demands and a large, overprotective truck driver. But it won't matter. I'm wanted here. Whose home is that? Gulliver asks, keeping his voice down as if the inhabitants of the 2-story house might overhear. It's tempting to ignore him again, to focus on what I'm going to say when the door opens, but I'd rather not have another painful incident. No one dangerous, I say, only half convinced of my own words. A friend. I push the little white doorbell button and listen to the familiar ringing echoing inside. A sound we've all heard 1,000 times from 1,000 places, reassuring in its sameness. Shadows move behind the windows and between the blinds. Too many for a single occupant. After a little while, footsteps make their way to the door. If there was a moment when I could have changed my mind and fled, it's gone now. The door opens and we're greeted by the ever-loving smile of Ian Greenwich. I need to see her, I demand, ignoring all decorum and pleasantries lest they allow me to chicken out. Ian looks confused, Gulliver's presence only adding to the unexpected scenario. I'm quick to answer the question in his eyes. I need to see Philomen. What makes you think that I can call upon your ancestor on a whim? Ian asks, pouring coffee into mugs. He didn't meet my demand immediately, instead inviting us inside his home. Again, he's wearing the most mundane and boring attire. Again, he's serving us coffee from pods, drooled out of a machine that strips all beauty out of getting a hot cup of joe. The box of croissants I brought him sits, untouched, at the back of the kitchen counter. You said you'd found something to help fill the void of your faith, I explain, shaking my head as he offers sugar. I assume that hole was Philomen-shaped, and that she offered a good receptacle for your devotion. I need to speak to her. Gulliver accepts sugar in his coffee, happily taking my share along with a generous helping of milk. His mug is filled to the brim and nearly spills over as he carefully stirs in the sugar. It's more complicated than that, Ian says, finishing up his own drink before taking a satisfied sip. We don't worship Philomen, not any more than we'd worship Doris, or you. We're nature lovers, peace lovers. Haven't you read the brochure? Pilvists are about harmony and well-being. Clouds, nature goddesses. It's all about finding a focal point to natural enlightenment. What Philomen can do is more important than who she is. That's what I want us to bring to Aquilo. To the world, really. Gulliver is listening in rapt attention, bringing his own drink to his mouth in what might as well be a circus act. The surface tension on his mug struggles to prevent coffee from dripping all over the counter, yet he manages it. Ian's sales pitch isn't unexpected. He wants my endorsement for his mayoral race. I suppose I get it, even though not everyone will. Most people in Aquilo have had their brush with the weird and wonderful. A ghost in their backyard shed, a monster knocking over the garbage at night, or even if they just witnessed the Donsalites. You can't live in Aquilo without being touched by magic. And everyone knows that the owner of the Aquilo Cafe is the local expert on magic. While that hasn't exactly been true since Doris's passing, the symbol remains. After all, my coffee shop's logo is the same as the town's. I've looked into it, but no one knows which came first. The two are linked at the root, two branches growing from a common trunk. But I didn't come here to be converted. But you know where to find her, I insist. Ian sighs, not out of impatience or annoyance, but rather resignation, as if he were pushed to a place he didn't want to go, a child having to step in front of his class to give an oral report or presentation. I'll make you a deal, he says, in words that don't seem to be his. If you endorse my campaign, I'll take you to her. Right now. Tell me you'll support me for mayor. Let me campaign in the cafe, and I'll take you to Philomen right this minute. The cult leader's kitchen is engulfed in silence as we stare each other down. I can hear his and Gulliver's breathing, the wind whistling against the front door, even the settling of the house. The last few drops of tap water making their way down the drain are like thunder in the subdued soundscape. There's a brief moment when I think I can hear something else. Another person breathing, another presence filling the space. Just as I try to focus and get a better idea of what that imperceptible sound is, Gulliver takes a loud, ravenous sip of coffee. Fine, I give up. I'll do it. Helen'll be pissed, but I'll do it. Take me to Philomen. Noises be damned, Gulliver's slurping be damned, even Helen. It doesn't matter. The moment I handed over that plush canary to the nurse, I lost all choice in the matter. It's just an election. It's just politics. I'm trying to save a life. All right, Ian says, pushing himself up from the counter and putting his half-full mug of coffee in the sink. Let's go. It's always in the forest, isn't it? Ian wasn't kidding when he said that he and his people were into nature. We didn't have to go very far before we were lost in it. This time, instead of going south, beyond the Pickering's farm and into the woods that border his fields, we went north, by only half a football field. Within minutes, we're no longer in Aquilo, but already digging deep into the forest beyond. I wonder if that's why Ian chose to live here, to be close to his beloved nature. Unlike the forest to the south, which is relatively flat, devoid of any significant topography, the north grew on a hill, climbing out of the shallow valley where Aquilo is built. In a way, that's reassuring. No matter how far we end up going, how lost we might get, all we have to do is go downslope and we're almost guaranteed to find our cozy little village again. On the flip side, it makes the journey that much more exhausting. At least it keeps a man warm, Gulliver says, noticing my labored breath. He punctuates his encouragement with a gentle punch to my shoulder, pushing me up a little in the process. While he's always been of a jovial nature, I'm starting to find his current good humor more and more out of place. I almost have to remind myself of the tragic circumstances that have brought me here. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Gulliver is trying to distract me from the weight of responsibility I've put upon myself. Mother knows I'm having a hard enough time climbing this hill. The irony, I suppose, is that he's the only one who doesn't seem to be winded by our walk. You're telling me a woman 3 decades over a century old climbed all of this? I complain, following Ian's slow pace. Did they carry her? Ian doesn't offer an answer, simply turning back to smile at us as he keeps going, pulling on a branch to aid his balance. Gulliver helps me with a steeper part of the climb, and despite the misplaced buoyancy of his mood, I'm glad he's here. Not only is he adequate moral support, and someone who could carry me all the way up the hill in a pinch, but if there's any danger, he's the kind of muscle that can hold its own. Strange how, only a few months ago, I would never have worried about duplicity from Ian. The ground finally levels out, settling into something of a plateau. The trees make it difficult to judge the size of the area, but it seems to go on for a good while. Looking back, I expect to see the village through the trees, but even with most of the leaves fallen from their branches, there's enough forest to hide Aquilo. We're here, Ian says, stopping next to a broken tree stump. You just keep in that direction. I suspect she'll know you're coming. He wipes the sweat from his brow before dusting the top of the stump and then sitting on it. He looks happy to wait there. While the weather gnaws at both Gulliver and me, being ill prepared for the cold, Ian is toasty in his thick winter coat. Not in the mood to see your high priestess? I ask, trying to hide my apprehension under sarcasm. But Ian either doesn't notice or remains unfazed. He looks back from where we came, that calm détente plastered on his face, and that trademark beatific smile. No. I wait for a few moments, expecting more. An explanation, or an excuse perhaps, but the leader of the Pilvis cult has brought us as far as he's willing. Whether by fear or respect, he will not enter the presence of his new spiritual leader. Although it must be getting near noon, there's a darkness to this place in the woods. Looking up, I can barely see the sky. A cloud covering the texture of a moth's wing hides the blue and prevents the sun from shining down on us. Shadows are dark but diffuse, almost impossible to distinguish. Dusk is as good as it gets in this part of the forest, it seems, and the cold finds its way under yet another layer of my skin. An impossible gust of wind cuts between the trees, having somehow wound its way unbroken all through the woods. On it, I hear a plethora of whispers, dead things murmuring in a discordant choir. There's something wrong with this part of the forest. As if at some point we passed an invisible threshold and entered another world.
Ah, daughter.
The familiar voice of Philomène Dufour cuts through the shuffle of leaves.
I wasn't sure you'd come.
The trees unravel at the sound of her words, branches peeling back in subtle, near imperceivable ways to reveal the old woman. She's dressed much as she was when visiting the cafe. The cold doesn't seem to touch her, despite the wind tossing her hair and skirts in wild billows. I don't know if there's a way to sense the power in someone. As far as I know, Dufour magic doesn't work like in movies and video games. Nothing is inherent to our nature. Nothing is part of our biology. Everything is learned, studied, and practiced. That's what I see in Philomène's eyes. Mad wisdom and the unchained leverage that comes with it. I'm witnessing the embodiment of knowledge in the wrong hands, and it is precisely what I've come to learn for myself. Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.